So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the next lecture of economics. Now, we will start the new unit, that is the financial institutions. So, under financial institutions, we will cover two major topics. The first one is securities, and the second one is the disinvestment. Disinvestment is nothing but the dilution of ownership of the government. It's a kind of shares only. So, under securities, we will discuss bonds, then we will discuss the equities, and then we will discuss other type of securities. First, we will discuss what is security. The security means, the security word is having multiple meanings in economics. First, security, it means the mortgage, the collateral. Suppose you are taking a loan from the bank or any financial institution. So in return that you have to give, कुछ तो गिरवी रखना पड़ता है. That mortgage or collateral is also known as security. But security in the general term means any financial instrument or asset is known as security. So these financial instruments, they are further divided into bonds, equities and the others. So under bond, we say this bond, a bond issued by this, a bond issued by that. So it's like bond is nothing but, it is like a car. So just like cars, they have some characteristics, some common characteristics are there. Just like each and every car have four wheels, they have one steering, they have windows. So all these are the common characteristics. Now car can be produced, can be manufactured by n number of companies. It can be Volkswagen, it can be Audi. So all these are Toyota, all these are the different models of different companies. They are manufacturing the same item, that is known as car. Similarly, bond is having a common characteristic. That characteristic is what you get in return. Suppose in case of bond, it is nothing but there will be a relationship between two entities A and B. Now what type of financial instrument is there? If it is a bond, so bond means B is giving a piece of paper on which it is written, you gave me this much amount of funds, for example 100 rupees, and I will give you 5% interest rate, 10% interest rate, whatever that interest rate is. So in case of bond, what you get is a fixed interest rate. Whatever will be, suppose A gave 100 rupees to B, if the financial condition of B, suppose B is a bank or Infosys, whatever that is, even if the SBI will go into loss, still SBI has to pay whatever that was promised by SBI. It means SBI has to pay 10% of interest rate. SBI will return 110 rupees after 1 year. It doesn't matter what is the financial condition of SBI. So in case of bonds, what you get, now who is having that particular bond? A, because A is now holding that particular bond. This is the bond on which it is written by B or SBI, you gave me 100 rupees, I'll give you 10% interest rate annually. So now it is being held by A. So in return, what A gets is fixed interest rate. And who is the holder? In this case, A is the holder. The holder is known as creditor. A is creditor and B is debtor. B is in debt of 100 rupees, which B has taken in the form of loan. So bonds, they are issued against loan. Whatever entity, whatever institution has taken a loan, they will issue these bonds. So bonds are issued against the loan and they are the interest yielding securities. So this A, this security is there. This is a financial instrument. It is yielding some interest to A. So all these are the different definitions of bond. So in case of bond, you will get a fixed interest rate, or we can say bonds are issued against the loan because B has taken a loan or issuing it, or we can say the bonds are interest yielding securities. Now depending on the company which was making car, the name of the car is different. Similarly, depending on the issuing authority, who is issuing? If it is issued by the government, then the nomenclature will be different. If it is issued by the bank, then the nomenclature will be different. If a company is issuing the bonds, then the nomenclature will be different. So first of all, it can be issued by the government. So government issues two types of bonds, and this classification is on the basis of maturity period. Maturity period means the time frame for which you have given that you have issued that particular bond. For example, in this case I said 10% annually. So 10% interest rate will be given by annually for how many years? Suppose SBI has issued for 5 years. So the maturity of this bond becomes 5 years. If SBI is issuing for 1 year, so the maturity becomes 1 year. So if the maturity period is more than 1 year, then the security or bond issued by government is known as dated security, or we can say government dated security. Can you tell me an example of government dated security? Most of us have heard these words, these different financial instrument. The example is Kisan Vikas Patra, because Kisan Vikas Patra is for 100 months. We can say National Savings Certificate. So National Savings Certificate issued by the post offices, which comes under the government only. So these are the examples of government dated securities or dated securities. Then the second type of bond issued by the government is treasury bills, also known as T-bills. So the maturity period of T-bills is less than 1 year, and there are 4 types of T-bills which are issued by the government depending on the maturity period. So the first type is 14 days, the second one is 91 days, the third one is 182 days, and the fourth one is 364 days. But 14 days is not much used, 182 is also not much used, 91 and 364 are very much prevalent. Although RBI recently started 7 days repo and all, it is different, but the bonds, the T-bills which are issued by the government, they are of 14 days, 91, 182 and 364. This is the international classification. But in India, we don't have 14 days T-bills. We have 91, 182, 364. Very rarely government uses 182 days maturity period T-bills. Then it was started in 1917. So it is a pre-independence concept. It started in 1917. And in 1997, there was some major changes in this T-bills. Earlier, there were 2 types of bills. First one was ad hoc treasury bills, and the second one was regular bills. So these ad hoc treasury bills, we discussed from 1997 the concept of budget deficit as well as this monetized deficit recently. So the concept of budget deficit was nullified after this ad hoc treasury bills, because ad hoc treasury bills, they were special type of bills issued by the government only, and this regular treasury bills, it was for some other. So when the budget deficit concept was abolished, so the distinction between ad hoc treasury bills and regular T-bills, it was abolished, and now we have only one type of T-bill and anybody can purchase it. Whether the government wants to, the state government want to purchase, the union government want to repurchase, the private entities, the banks, anybody can purchase these T-bills now. Earlier, ad hoc treasury bills, they were available only to the government, and these regular bills, they were available to banks and other financial institutions. So the ad hoc treasury bills were abolished in 1997 along with the concept of budget deficit. So this is abolished. Then it can be issued, T-bills can be issued only by the government of India. T-bills cannot be issued by the state governments. Only union government can issue the T-bills, and government of India is there. They will issue T-bills to RBI. RBI on the behalf of government, they will sell to the primary dealers, and these primary dealers, they will sell in the market. So on the behalf of government of India, RBI sells T-bills in the market, and T-bills can be issued only by government of India. They cannot be issued by the state government. This is what we have about the bonds issued by the government. Then bonds can be issued by banks also. So a bond issued by a bank is known as FD, fixed deposit. But there are a few characteristics of FD. They are like, they are not tradable, they are not negotiable. Not tradable and not negotiable means you cannot negotiate with the bank. Suppose you visit a bank ICICI and you offer that I want to deposit 10 lakh rupees, I want the FD rate of 10%. This is not possible because FDs are not negotiable. It will be only a one directional information that will be given by the banks to the customers, that if the maturity period of your FD is 60 days, this will be the interest rate. If the maturity period is 90 days, this will be the interest rate. If it is 180 days, this will 181 days, this will be the interest rate. So all this is decided by the banks. Now the customers, they cannot negotiate with the banks in case of fixed deposit. Then we have tradable. Suppose you have taken an FD, you gave a loan to SBI and you are having the possession of that FD. Now you cannot sell this FD to your friend. It is not tradable. You cannot sell it. That particular FD will be matured on your name only. That is not transferable. So that is not tradable. So these are the two major characteristics of the FD. And then we have a bond issued by the companies. So a bond issued by company is known as debenture. Then we have one more special type of debenture, that is known as convertible debenture. So depending on the convertibility, this is the classification. One more classification will be there that we will discuss during the Basel norms, depending on the type of debt. If it is normal debt or it is a subordinate debt, that classification, normal debt and subordinate debt, that we will discuss under the Basel norms. But here, debenture and convertible debenture. So debenture is finished. Any bond issued by the company is known as debenture. Convertible debenture means maybe for 2 or 3 years that particular financial instrument will behave like a bond. Will behave like a bond means will get a fixed interest rate. But after that pre-decided time, that is 2 years, 3 years or something, it will be converted to shares. Now what is shares? First we will discuss. So shares is nothing but a certain percentage of the ownership. This person A, which has started this company, decided I want to dilute the ownership. So this piece of paper on which it is written, you are 0.001% owner of the company because you have 500 shares of this company. So shares is nothing but it is a certain percentage of the ownership. So shares is simple, not a problem. This more discussion on shares we will do under the capital market. Share market we will discuss what exactly is shares, how the shares are being how the company gets registered, the company gets listed in the stock exchanges, what is IPO, FPO, all these details we will discuss later in the next few chapters of the financial institutions. Then we have what is preference shares. So preference shares is not a very common topic, it's not a very common concept in India because it is not much allowed in India. Preference shares, so if you are a shareholder, it means you have some ownership. What you get in return is known as dividend. Dividend means it is a certain percentage of the profit. It is like A, B and C. They are the three shareholders and we have promoter D. So D is also having some shares. Now suppose this company is in a profit of 100 crore rupees. So there is something known as annual general meeting. Every year the listed companies, they have to call their shareholders and a meeting will be done. Just like in the movie that we have movie of Amitabh Bachchan and Abhishek Bachchan, which is somehow based on the Ambani brothers, Dhirubhai Ambani. I'm not able to recall the name. So in that movie, the annual general meeting, it was held in the public place. So under annual general meeting, what happens is the future decisions of that particular company will be taken along with the shareholders. So all of them, shareholders as well as the promoters, board of directors, all this, they will sit together and they will decide. So when they will sit together, at that time only they will decide that what percentage of this profit will be diluted to the or will be distributed among the shareholders. So for example, they decided that 5 crore will be distributed. Now if A is having 10 shares, B is having 50 shares, and C is having maybe 40 shares. So 40, 50 and 50, it's 100 shares. So this profit will be distributed among this A, B and C as well as the shares held by D, the promoter. So this is what dividend is. Dividend is nothing but the certain percentage of the profit which is being distributed among the shareholders. And how it is being distributed? As per the decisions of the annual general meeting. And each and every shareholder will have some voting right. That voting right is dependent on the number of shares that you have. So if suppose it is 100 and the total shares of the company is 1000. So it means 100 shares with A, B, C and 900 shares with the promoter in this example. So D will be having 90% voting right. A and B and C, they will be having 1%, 5% and 4% voting right. Then we have, and how it is negative, if a promoter is having 90% of the voting rights, so they can do whatever they want to do, because we discussed this thing. If you are having 51% of the voting rights, what is the significance of this? If you are having 26% of the voting right, what is the significance of this? Anybody who is having 51% is regarded as the owner of the company. If you have 0.001% of the shares of SBI, you will also be regarded as the owner of the company. But who is having the majority shareholders is regarded as the major one, the major promoter of that particular company. So, for example, SBI is there. Why SBI is regarded as public sector bank or the government bank? Because government is having the majority of the shares of SBI. It's not that full 100 shares are held by government of India. No, the majority of the shares are held by government of India. Then we have what is the significance of 26%? The significance is if you want to make some major changes in the constitution of the company, what you need is more than 75% of the voting right. For example, this promoter D can make any changes in this company. Suppose this company is in, for example, super profs. So super profs, whoever will be the shareholder, the promoter of the super prof, if the promoter wants to make changes in the basic changes, for example, right now it is on the online classes. Tomorrow they want to go to the offline classes. So, or maybe tomorrow they want to enter into the IT business, some other business. So these basic changes of the constitution, that is known as article of association in technical words. So that basic constitution can be amended only if you have more than 75% of the voting right. So in this case, whoever is having the minority shares, so the majority shareholder can anytime use the discretionary power that can go against the minority shareholders, because they have only 10% of the voting rights and this promoter is having 90% of the voting rights, and this promoter is not diluting the more ownership. So it means they can misuse this particular voting rights anytime. That is why SEBI said, if you are listed in any stock exchange, the general public, A, B, C, they are the general public. If you are listing in any stock exchange, minimum you have to dilute 25%. So if D will be forced to dilute 25%, so D's ownership will be less than, the shares available will be less than 750, or the ownership will be less than 75%. So unless and until D takes the consent of A, B, C and all these different guys, D or the promoter cannot make any basic changes in this particular company. So that is what, to take care of, to look after the interest of the minority shareholders, SEBI said, if you are listed in NSE or BSE, you have to implement this particular provision, and that provision is D is forced to dilute at least 25% of the shares. It's not like I don't need money, I don't want to dilute. No such thing. If you are listed, you have to do it, because otherwise you can misuse your voting rights, because A, B, C will have no say. Because if D wants to make major changes, D can do it without even taking the consent of A, B, C. So to take care of the minority shareholders, SEBI has decided this particular. SEBI gave this new rule in 2010. Then SEBI gave a new rule to public sector companies only. This we are talking about the private sector companies. SEBI gave the same rule for public sector companies. That we will discuss here. So in the annual general meeting, it is being decided what percentage of the profit will be diluted among the shareholders. So preference shareholders, they got preference. When they got preference? While distributing the dividend. So when the dividend will be distributed, they got the preference. And the second time they got the preference is during liquidation. If suppose something goes wrong with the company and the company wants to liquidate, the company wants to file the bankruptcy. So in that case, preference shareholders got the preference. It means what? Suppose this company is having the asset of 100 rupees and this company has diluted the shares of 20 rupees. So A and B are there, which have invested, A and B has invested 20 rupees in the shares, and this company, for example Infosys has taken a loan of 70 rupees and Infosys has also issued preference shares, this type of shares of 20 rupees. So three scenario. This Infosys is having total assets of 100 rupees. This is asset. Infosys had taken a loan of 70 rupees. Infosys has issued normal shares of 20 rupees and preference shares also of 20 rupees. Now Infosys wants to file bankruptcy. So when Infosys wants to file bankruptcy, what is going to happen? The assets will be sold in the market. So you will get 100 rupees. Now how you will distribute this 100 rupees? That is based on some priority, and that priority is this. If Infosys has taken a loan, it means what? Infosys has issued some bond. So that bondholder will get the first priority. So bondholder will get 70 rupees. Now the remaining is 30 rupees. Out of the 30 rupees, preference shareholders need 20 rupees and normal shareholders need 20 rupees. Now because preference shareholders, they got preference during liquidation, so preference shareholders, they will get full 20 rupees and the normal shareholders, they will get only 10 rupees, and 10 rupees will be lost of the normal shareholder because they are the owner of the company, and if you are the owner, you have to bear the risk. That is a very common thing. Now if so much a positive thing about preference shareholders, what is the negative? The negative is you don't get the voting rights. We discussed during annual general meeting, these shareholders, they will go, they will decide, they will vote for the future policies of the company, but no voting rights are there in case of preference shareholders. So that is the negative thing of the preference shareholders. And recently RBI allowed the companies to issue preference shares for non-resident deposits. And that too in the form of bonus. So bonus shares can be issued to non-resident people in the form of preference shares. And the other securities, they're like check, we have demand draft, we have currency. So this is what the broad things which are related from exam perspective, which are related to securities. The next topic is disinvestment.